Welcome to the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. This is the podcast where we will have real talk on what is happening in the local market of Greater Vancouver. Here we'll discuss the news, strategies, and interviews to help you man up on your real estate career. I'm your host, Cameron Manning. All right, welcome back to the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. Great to have you guys here again listening with me. And I'm extremely excited because I have an awesome guest for you guys today. This is someone who we've been talking about getting together and doing this podcast for a while now, and we're finally making it happen for you guys. I have Derek Peever of Peeverconn Group of Companies in the house today. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Cam. I'm thrilled to be here.
Perfect, Derek. So again, you know, you and I, we go back a bit now. We've known each other for probably a good 6 years or so. And I mean, your journey has just, you know, I've been following it for a long time. You've just been killing it in the real estate investing community, but you're also been providing some excellent support and training for others. You've really become a passionate person when it comes to helping people with their personal net worth. And so I kind of want to bring it back though, because maybe there's some listeners on the podcast here who haven't heard your story. Maybe we can kind of go back to the origins of Derek Peever a little bit for me, if that works for you.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. And you know, I brings a quote to mind: "To study, practice, and teach." With Jim Rohn quote. So you know, I look at myself as a practitioner, but I love to come back and you know share it at the meetup groups and seminars like the IPG, because that's where I got a lot of my early knowledge and took action from it. So my story, basically, I started off in the marine industry. So my grandpa, my dad, my brother were all tugboat captains.
Okay.
And I actually started working on the tugboats when I was 17 as well. Before that, worked all kinds of odd jobs, right from paper routes to loony stores to you name it, roofing. And basically, along the way, I ran into a lady that you know very well.
Mm-hmm.
We're basically real estate brothers, because our rich mom, Kelly Fry, started my journey, and I like to say turned on my switch. So I'm always giving credit out to Kelly Fry, because who knows, I'd probably be on a tugboat right now if it wasn't for her just taking the time to, you know, make a complete stranger aware about a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mm-hmm.
I took a chance ride in a car with her back in 2005.
Right.
In the fall of 2005, went for a ride with my friend to pick up his boss from the airport, and he was renovating houses for a lady named Kelly Fry.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, wasn't really like me. I was usually busy anyways, but I just took this ride, basically a joyride with my friend to the airport. And the whole way back from the airport to Pitt Meadows, I remember leaning into the front seat and just listening intently to everything she had to say about her properties in Winnipeg and cash flow and all this kind of stuff. Because I always knew I wanted to be successful and I wanted to do something big, but I didn't really know. At that point, my path was through the marine industry. And I had plans to save up to buy a Harley and a boat and a principal residence. You know, I had a little bit of savings, and at that point, I changed my whole direction, my whole plan, and decided to basically go the route of delayed gratification, take my savings, my line of credits, invest them in cash flow real estate, real assets, and then later on down the road, have my assets buy the boat and the principal residence and those things. So I was renting a basement suite already, buying condos in Agassiz, you know, for $65,000, $50,000, $52,000, and we would renovate them ourselves. We put an equal amount of money to our partners. We got the mortgages, and when I say we, it was my partner Carson Kahn, my business partner, my best friend growing up, and you know, he would come out to the seminars with me, learn, and we just kind of started the real estate journey that way.
Yeah. Kelly's been a big influence on a lot of investors. I mean, obviously, for those of you listening, if you're following, make sure you guys go and listen. We did an interview with Kelly, and it was a pretty powerful and raw one where we talked a lot about Kelly's growth as well, to the point now where she's helping so many investors on a daily basis build their own portfolio and build their own wealth through real estate. And predominantly, it's not just helping as a realtor, but it's the education side, right? Now, from what I remember, though, is after that chance meeting in the car and hearing about her, you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but then you guys lost touch for a number of years, right? You didn't see her again after that point. Like, it was kind of this mystical person, and then she was gone, right? So then, but you guys reconnected like a number of years down the road, and you kind of built a relationship after that. So
correct, yeah. So I basically got going on the journey. I read the second book, Cash Flow Quadrant, read OPM, you know, ABC's Real Estate Investing, Ken McElroy, the whole Rich Dad series.
Just went down the line.
Yeah, just kept going, right? And then I bumped into her a couple of years later at an acre, and I remember seeing her from across the room and just jumped out of my seat and went over and basically gave her a big hug and said, thank you so much. I'm
Right.
basically here because of you.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was just joining Rain as well around the same time.
Okay. Gotcha. So that was the build there. So 2 years of investing, you'd built a small portfolio and ran back into this kind of a mentor that wasn't really a mentor, but it was what started you on your path. But now she's become your rich mom.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So I always joke around, call her my rich mom because
Yeah.
I had great parents too. They
Mm-hmm.
taught me good things, save money, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But Kelly, just by simply telling me about that book at the right time and place, really like opened my eyes to, I was in the what quadrant I was in, the E quadrant,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that I wanted to work my way over to the S and then the B and I quadrants, right? It was just
Right.
a whole paradigm shift.
Totally. I mean, for those who haven't read the book, I mean, obviously it's a huge starting point to start thinking differently, and that's really what it is. It's not a book on how to become wealthy. It's more just the mindset, right? To start thinking about money differently, so that you can then start building the tools that will get you there, right?
Correct.
So now you mentioned you started out in Agassiz, right?
Right.
So a lot of people, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're in the lower mainland, a lot of people out there are skittish about going into the valley, right? I always make the joke, I have clients that sometimes think the world ends at Boundary Road, right? They don't want to leave Vancouver. But there's a lot of opportunity out in the valley, and you found that opportunity early on in 2005 by going way out to Agassiz, and you were buying condos, you said, for 50,000, 60,000, and renovating them and putting tenants in, and that got you started, right? It started
Right.
building equity, started going from there. So once you started with those properties, what kind of was the next level for Derek? What was your kind of next movement into the real estate world?
So basically, what we would do is we would buy them, renovate them ourselves, and then
Yep.
raise the rent so to a point where they would cash flow, and we would recycle our down payment as soon as possible. So around that time, 2006, 7, the market was kind of similar to how it was
Mm-hmm.
in 2017, and prices were rising quickly. If you buy the worst unit in a decent building or a good building and renovate it, and then within a year you could basically recycle your down payment. What we did by refinancing, that is, and what we did for our fourth deal is we bought a townhouse in Pitt Meadows and gutted it, refinanced it right after the renovation. We were able to take out most of our money. Then for deal number 5, it was Carson Kahn, my business partner's aunt,
Mm.
had a large line of credit, and we basically did a little business plan, convinced her to buy a condo outright in Mission, renovate it. The plan was to flip it ourselves for sale by owner, which is a good lesson there. Doesn't work.
Right.
And we wound up renting it out and refinancing. We paid off her line of credit. She was into it just for $15,000 for the cost of the renovation,
Mm-hmm.
and we bought one on the lower floor. Because what tended to happen was we would buy one in the building, we'd start renovating it. People would see all the action going on, some young go-getters, and they would knock on our door and say, "You really better buy this one down the hall. It's cheaper
Right.
and on a better floor," or whatever the case was, right? Same thing happened in Mission Manor, where we bought one, and we were always looking to make sure it cash flowed.
Mm-hmm.
That was number one. That's why we went to Agassiz.
Yeah.
Is because even in Cloverdale, where I lived, you talk to the realtors, you analyze, just over-analyzing everything, and we could not find a way to make it cash flow, even optimistically at the time. That's why we went out there. That's why Pitt Meadows Townhouse worked. That's why the condos in Mission worked after the
Yeah.
renovation. Because they would tell us, oh, they're renting for $1,000. We knew that we could renovate them and rent them for $1,250.
Right.
And there was our couple $100 a month cash flow. That we were
Perfect.
after.
Perfect. And so bringing in your business partner's aunt there was kind of starting to really get into the real raising capital side of things, which you've become well known for now, right? I mean, you've been multi-award-winning joint venture partner of the year. So that was kind of the first. It sounds like the first kind of real time you went and said, "Hey, why don't you bring your money over here with us? We'll invest it and help grow it for you," right? And now you've really created so many different systems now. I mean, your first big launch into a bigger style of a business plan, correct me if I'm wrong, was going into the super suites realm, right? So doing high-end furnished rentals. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we were keeping really busy. I was always renovating a property, one or two on the go, while I was working my full-time job on the tugboats. I used to go renovate, get changed in my car, go to work for a 12-hour shift, sleep for 4-6 hours, go to renovate, back to work. And we were accumulating these properties, but we realized that we'd have a vacant month or an appliance would break down and we couldn't make a living off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting busier and busier. You know, we were at a RAIN seminar, learned about furnished rentals.
Mm-hmm.
A lady named Catherine Brooker
Okay.
from Calgary.
Yep.
And she was renting to oil and gas executives in Calgary. And basically I was taking notes like crazy in Coquitlam back in the day, or I think it might even have been in Vancouver, quarterly meetings at RAIN back then. But I just tried it in Abbotsford. We had a deal in the pipeline. I learned that information. I said, instead of doing this unfurnished, let's give it a try furnished.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the same thing that most people do, is they just add $500. You know, so the $1,200 condo, I was going to ask, you know, $1,800 or so
Mm-hmm.
instead of 13, and you know, gave it a go. And we basically never did another unfurnished rental after that, because we were getting for a long time a lot more leads than we had inventory. So
Right.
we would have a list of 10 people wanting furnished suite. We'd add another one. We'd add another one, and just couldn't keep up with the demand for our furnished ads.
And you said your furnished rentals out in Abbotsford. Right. So again, you know, it's counterproductive to, or counter, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like counterintuitive to what a lot of people would think, right? A lot of people would be like, okay, well, Calgary is a bigger center, right? So why wouldn't you start that in somewhere like Vancouver?
That's a good point.
Right. So, and again, you said, well, no, to me, it makes more sense to be out in Abbotsford, right? Because you were.
Go where there's no organized competition.
There you go.
We also like.
That's the key.
No mom and pop competition. So
yeah.
Basically, like no competition at all.
You are your own competition. You're creating the demand, right?
Yeah. So you know, for example, we kind of have cleared from Kelowna and markets like that over the years. All of the great real estate markets.
Right.
It's a seasonal furnished rental market where people make the hay when the sun shines during the peak season, the school year, and then there's kind of a dead season,
right?
Where people will drop their rents incredibly low because they're just not a sophisticated operator. Whereas in Abbotsford, there's really no Airbnbs, to speak, relatively speaking, right? And there was one other company that operated back when we started in town, and they kind of packed it up back when it really slowed down around 2008.
Okay.
So it always reminds me of that Forrest Gump scene where they're out on the shrimp boat and there's
a
huge storm, and those crazy guys were still out there at the end of it because they didn't know any better.
Yep.
And then all the other boats are gone, and you start raking in the shrimp.
Yeah, exactly. They're the last boat in the big fish there and big sea, and just raking it in. So that's kind of what your strategy was, to go into those areas that didn't have the competition, be the only boat out there, right? And going back, I guess, to your marine background too, right? That's the Forrest Gump. Hey Bubba, well, what kind of shrimping are we gonna do? I love it. That's awesome. So, from when I kind of got to know you, then, like I said, we've known each other about 6 years. Now the system's in play, right? Peeverconn Group of Companies is growing. You've got, some of your regular rentals probably still. You've got a lot of your almost all furnished rentals now rolling, and you've been expanding from there to the point where your furnished rentals, we'll focus on super suites for now. Staying with super suites, you are now not just here in the Lower Mainland, right? You're taking this now nationally, right?
Correct, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so to your point about the unfurnished rentals, we were up to about 30 of them at one point, mainly in the Fraser Valley. We have a few in Red Deer still, 4 condos there. But we converted a lot of them to furnished rentals,
right?
Almost too much so. And then we learned the hard way around 2010 that when there's a big slowdown in the economy, you have oversupply. So we actually converted a lot of those back to unfurnished rentals.
Right.
Because I found that the older stock does worse in the soft times, because a lot of these companies, they just want the best, right?
Right.
Like if it's an insurance claim or a company relocation, typically the end user is just going to say, give me a nice suite, like the newest area, the best resort amenities.
If the insurance is paying for it, why not, right?
Right. So we're actually down to only 5 unfurnished rentals. So over the last 2 years, starting around 3 years ago, we started kind of systematically purging or weeding the garden.
Yeah.
You take your ones that are just aged, or maybe the resident profile of the building starting to shift, or a few key council members are packing it in.
Yeah.
And the maintenance is slipping. They're not enforcing the bylaws on the patios, the parking. That there's cash calls coming. You're looking for stuff like that, and most importantly, when the fish are biting.
Yeah.
And when it's harvest time. I like to think about the seasons of real estate.
Right.
And to me, it was fairly clear after a long period of slowness, summer, if you will.
Yeah.
In Abbotsford, 7-8 years of relatively flat prices, and then we were clearly in harvest time there
Yeah.
for a while.
2016, 17, it was time to
Exactly. So we
cash in.
basically just, it breaks my heart because I was always trying to accrue every property in
Yeah.
the world and hang on to them all. But at the end of the day, if you own 50 properties and you're wondering if you're going to be able to fill up your gas tank, then what good is that, right?
For sure.
So I got my head around, harvesting the properties. So I am a long-term holder, but I'm okay with 7, 8 years as a hold period.
Yeah.
Some of them are still 10 years plus we've held them, and we'll continue to do so for a few more.
Yeah.
But I don't imagine very often hanging onto a property for the entire amortization period.
Right, right. Well, especially with the model, like you said, if you're focusing on the high-end furnished rentals and the clientele demand a certain type of property, they are going to start critiquing and you might lose that clientele looking at some of these older stock buildings, especially as the buildings wear out, right? They just look dated. And if an insurance company is giving someone the brand new units, well, that's what you have to keep providing. So it makes total sense to take them to harvest, cash in on them. They've done well by you, and now it's time to move on to the next crop, right?
There's actually an old school Rain member that you might have met named John Waite. He used to drive around in the Rolls Royces and stuff.
Yep.
Take me around town in Abbotsford and pretend he was my grandpa, and I hope I saw people that I knew.
Oh yeah.
But he had me over at his house on Eagle Mountain one day and showed me a spreadsheet where we call it the master analyzer, and it shows every little property detail. Purchase price, assessed value, financing terms, original capital invested, mortgage paid on, all in this one amazing spreadsheet. It actually ranks your properties.
Interesting.
Based on cap rate. So
right.
Ones that you think are the best aren't necessarily always the
right.
top producers. You just have an emotional weird thing where you have the perception they're doing the best. But that thing shows you, okay, well, these are the bottom 5, 10. You want to be continuously purging out that bottom 5, 10%.
Right.
If, your mortgage is coming up for renewal, depending on your partner's needs and plans, your personal plans, maybe the end of a long tenancy, that kind of stuff.
That's a very interesting tool. I mean, it's and again, it takes the emotion then out of it because it's a systematic approach, right? And as much as we always say, you got to keep the emotions between the lines when it comes to investing. Sometimes you can become emotional, like you really like this place after the reno you did. Like I totally get it. Like so that's an interesting system because it really helps you take that emotion out and say, okay, well at the end of the day, these are ones that are probably going to be costing us more or less performing. Like I like that. That's really awesome. Okay, so we kind of touched on it, but we didn't go fully deeply. But you're starting to expand this now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Super Suites is in the last 3 years going across Canada. We started off in Calgary as our next kind of most developed area where we've been 3 years. That's an interesting story. Like we are learning a ton out there.
Probably, yeah, for sure.
I've been in Alberta since 2010 in Red Deer, so I know how it is with the cyclical nature. But when I heard about all the bad news in Calgary and in general for the province, I was really just kind of licking my lips. I know there's a lot of people that are suffering and getting laid off, and that's unfortunate. But as far as investing in the market, when there's blood in the streets, that's the time. And
absolutely.
Contrarian, and I listen to a ton of Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
One interesting thing I like telling people is that all of the annual shareholder meetings for Berkshire Hathaway, going back to the 80s, are all on YouTube now.
Oh yeah.
So I've watched them all multiple times. It's just incredible. Normally you have to be a shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway, which is like $100,000 to get your foot in the door to attend these meetings. And Warren Buffett decided to put them all on YouTube just in the last few years.
Wow.
Yeah. So Calgary was number 2. We went to Winnipeg. We've gone to now Ottawa, Edmonton. We've got stuff in the pipeline in Langford on Vancouver Island.
Right.
Prince George and Kamloops are also on the radar. And then locally here we have 2 teams, Fraser Valley West and Fraser Valley East.
Okay. So really just taking it across. And obviously you've put partners in every single one of those areas because you as an operator, you can't necessarily be dealing with situations that come up in Calgary and Edmonton and Winnipeg and Prince George. So you've started partnering with people on boots on the ground that are helping you run Super Suites now, almost in a loose way. I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost kind of like a franchise way almost.
Well,
in a loose fashion.
The thing is, like, if you compare Tim Hortons and Starbucks, right? Tim Hortons is the franchise model, and Starbucks is the corporate model. I look at it as much more like Starbucks. Like
right.
I read Howard Schultz books. My sister-in-law is a regional manager at Starbucks. Big Starbucks fan.
Yeah.
Just how they treat their employees, partners, and everything else.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that whether you go into a Starbucks in Vancouver or Calgary, like they're very consistent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Coca-Cola tastes the same in China as
Yeah.
it does here.
Yeah.
And to Morton's, I think you probably agree, not so much,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. Totally.
So we try to give the example of being not a franchise. It's
Right.
corporately controlled. We Abbotsford is our head office,
Yeah.
and basically we do quality control, consistency. Like when somebody's moving into a suite in Calgary, they're experiencing the same music, the same shampoo, the same conditioner, the same
Got it.
linen, the same dishware, everything, right?
Excellent.
Same
Yeah.
checklists.
Yeah.
So, basically, we're more like that. We partner with local people on performance-based pay, which is a big thing of mine. Like we don't hire local property managers for a fee.
Right.
I've been down that road in Red Deer, and that's my whole case to my investors is that I only make $1 when you make $1.
Yeah.
If you lose $1, I lose $1.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's no markups on anything. It's just 100% pure performance-based pay.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically give up half of my ownership on the management side
Right.
to the local partner in those
Okay.
areas.
Yep.
And they're getting their days early. They're looking after every little concern. They're 24/7
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
the ball. But we treat Abbotsford as head office. So if carpet cleaning gets done, we pay it from Abbotsford. The office is the grease that keeps the people in the field, moving quickly,
Right.
responding to suite repair and maintenance and any client concerns.
For sure.
So we're doing the account receivable, payable, any lead that comes in. I'm typically responding from Abbotsford, like I'm the controller
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
HQ for Canada.
Right. Okay. Got it. Got it. And that's a brilliant system. But it just goes to show again how in tune you are to education and looking at, we have a saying here at our office called success leaves clues, right? So you said you've been reading the books, following the models, and building what works based on other people's success, right? You're not necessarily reinventing the wheel, right? But you're following what other people are doing, which is just awesome. And so since Super Suites now, like I'm just going to kind of skew us off because again, this is the Peeverconn Group of Companies, right? And that's what always has impressed me about your investment models. You've got other skews as well. Obviously, Super Suites has been your big one.
Bread and butter, yeah.
It's your bread and butter. It's really what sets you apart out there in the investment world. But you've now been expanding that into other things, right? We had you out a few months back with your team from Enkind Homes, which was very interesting what you guys are doing there. But today we've got you speaking tonight at one of our events on your newest venture, which is independent aging in place living, right? Through your Mahogany acquisitions out there. So why don't you take us through a little bit that? Obviously, if you're going to be in the room at one of our events, you're going to get the full picture.
Right.
But tell us a little bit why you went that route now and how you kind of put this all together, because you basically own nearly 20% of a tower is essentially what it is, right?
I'm a part owner.
Yeah.
A block of units in a
Yeah.
tower, and I'm just super fortunate. It's crazy how these things come about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was totally a different picture to start, and it evolved into this. You never know where things are going to evolve.
Totally.
But we're like operators, and we're value add strategies. So the two that I've kind of fallen into over the years from learning about it or people you meet is furnished corporate rentals and independent living for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
We've owned some commercial properties, tried to do repositions and that, but the ones that really stuck, we've tried it all.
Yeah.
Like my Ford Explorer used to say, we buy homes for cash. So I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But, Super Suites has definitely been the bread and butter. But over the next 20 years, I believe the business model with the most scale is actually active independent living,
Mm-hmm.
which we're doing now. That's one of the reasons why we're looking to get into that.
Yeah.
Because this project in Abbotsford called Mahogany at Mill Lake,
Yep.
it's a 26-story. You're very familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For your audience, it's basically a mixed-use building, 3 floors of commercial,
Yeah.
with pharmacy, doctor, bistro,
Yeah.
resort-style amenities, cardiologist. Everything a senior could hope for is in the
Totally. The building is just phenomenal, and it's a new standard, I think, in Abbotsford, because they don't really have anything like it.
Absolutely.
It's
And there's nothing
stunning.
coming for 8 years. I
Yeah.
can tell you that, which is pretty amazing.
It's going to set that building apart for sure.
Yes, and it's incredible who lives there.
Mm-hmm.
The resident profile of that building is like the who's who of town.
Right.
Counselors and business owners, and it's really special just being around, like
Mm-hmm.
the Strat Council there.
Yeah,
And it's just cool being around that caliber of people.
for sure.
But basically, the developer, I've got a long-standing relationship
Mhm.
with them. That's my other rich mom, I guess you'd
Right.
And she, Diane Dells from Quantum Property, she's one of the only female CEOs of a big development company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She founded the local Fraser Valley Urban Development Institute, which is
Okay.
like a group of
Mm-hmm.
professionals that meet monthly and
Yeah.
go over fundamentals, all this kind of stuff. But this was actually the seventh or eighth building that I followed them to.
Right.
So, way back 2007, I bought 3-4 units at Tamarind Westside in
Mm-hmm.
Abbotsford. Then I followed them to the next one, to the next one, to the next one.
Yeah.
I just got on that friends and family early list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Access before the public, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And basically, she approached me about Mahogany Tower back in like 2013 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, we have a group that's buying a block of units, and we wanted to entertain possibly you operating them as super suites. And I quickly said to her, I said, I love it, appreciate it, I want to do it. But the problem is 46 super suites will fail.
Yeah.
Because it's
too much inventory.
Way too much inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very niche business where you might do like 4 or 8 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Those typically are perfect sets. That's what housekeepers
Right.
can do in a day.
For sure.
But I had already been researching just through attending RAIN meetings and
Mm-hmm.
hearing it there. YouTube University, I'm always watching panels. Like I'll just go on YouTube and search Global Real Estate Panel 2019, and they're talking about prop tech, they're talking about independent living, whatever. And so it was already on my radar. And then I reached out to RAIN and I said, hey, if I do all this research on independent living, can I do a presentation?
Right.
Offer some value to the membership.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I had just taken RAIN Speak and courses like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for a topic to do. So I basically undertook this big research project. I interviewed the president of Chartwell REIT, authors of Seniors Housing, The Future of Seniors Housing, Kate Hanser.
Wow. Yeah.
She's a consultant to independent living projects. And assembled all this research, taught it at RAIN, gave a presentation to this investor group, way back then, 10 people in a big boardroom and just sweating it. But,
Yeah.
and pitched it, and they saw, had faith in me and basically gave me the opportunity, and I partnered with them. And it was kind of a cool deal because I was able to actually raise an investor to come in to increase the share that I was going to get. So I was entitled to a certain share just for the sweat equity,
Right.
like I typically am in my deals.
Yep.
But I actually raised a significant amount of money to increase my share and get a sweet deal for the investor I brought in.
Right. Right.
It's a new structure to me. You might find it interesting, but there's aging in place community living,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of like the mothership
Yep.
for this project, potentially other ones.
Right. Right.
Then there's Mahogany Platinum Suites Inc., which is the operating company. So Mahogany Platinum refers to the 5th floor to 10th floor
Okay.
of Mahogany, as well as a commercial unit.
Oh. Okay.
Then the rest of the building is just Mahogany. So the difference with the Mahogany Platinum residence is they have access to a director of care in Unit 100 on the main floor. So it's like a concierge. The rest of the building doesn't. They have access to that space, which has its own dining area, its own theater, golf. It has aging in place renovations, aging in place technologies, turnkey utility package. So it's kind of like an all-inclusive luxury rental product.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
rest of the building is 20% rentals, but obviously mainly owner-occupiers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's basically a little bit about Mahogany Platinum, and it's a real nice model because we're actually doing furnished suites as well.
Okay.
So for example, it's the same housekeepers. It's the same. Like there's so many similarities between an all-inclusive in active independent living and a super suite.
Right.
So
Right.
It's very complementary.
Yeah, so you can kind of tie into all your existing systems already, kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's super awesome. So those have already launched now because the building's been done since about January, February-ish. So you've been starting to move residents in now, hey? So it's like this is active. This is happening right now.
In the thick of it. So
That's
we're
awesome.
50% occupied right now.
Okay.
My dream was to pre-lease it when we got the keys, and we've been working really hard.
Yeah.
But we had quite a turn down in the market as this building came online.
Yeah.
And the faint of heart wouldn't have made the leasing. Like we had deadlines on our mortgage to get to 10 leases, to get to 15 leases, and I swear, just having a deadline, it's incredible, right? You have a date and a deadline,
Pushes you.
and we would magically get to that amount of leases like a week before, or in some cases a day before. Deadlines from the bank. Just grinding.
Just hustling, trying to get anyone in through the door that you can, eh?
It's a very hard model to lease up. Like I knew the book said it would take 18 months to 24 months to get to normal occupancy, which is 80% in independent living.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do it obviously way faster. And what we've been doing to to get to quicker occupancies, we've been leasing a lot of them furnished. So this is kind of interesting, and I haven't told you this yet, but a lot of our floors, 5th to 10th,
Mm-hmm.
are now mixed, active, independent, as well
And
as
super
suites.
suites.
And it's actually genius that we just fell into,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the apprehension from people moving in is they say, oh, well, everybody's so old here.
Right.
Because nobody thinks of themselves
Yeah.
that old when they look at someone else who's 80 or
Yeah.
85.
Yeah.
So now you've got a little bit of, a bit of activity on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some families, some professionals. They're bumping into new people, having to remember people's names.
Yeah. Yeah.
This doesn't feel like a stale
They're keeping them sharp and
floor, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's what sets us apart from
Mm-hmm.
every other place.
Well, and then too, by turning a few of them into super suites in the short term, you're still bringing in that income as well, right? So that way it's not fully just costing,
That's right.
so it's kind of a mix that you're kind of, okay, we can run it as a super suite until we've got that person ready. And then when they're ready, you can turn it over into an active independent. So it's super
That's right.
genius.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can juggle. That's a good point. You can juggle between the three strategies.
Mm-hmm.
The other one being unfurnished market rentals.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So that was always our fallback. Oh, if we don't lease them up quick enough in independent living or super suites,
Yeah.
we'll rent them unfurnished. But
And there's a high demand just for rentals period right
you know
now.
what the truth is, though, Cam, and there is, but at Mahogany, at the prices we need,
Yeah.
for a 2-bedroom, $2,500 plus utilities,
Mm-hmm.
they're not renting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
The market hasn't adjused to that type of product out there
Right.
yet, right? Again, because it's so new. Everyone looking at it like, where did this tower come from, right? Like there's no glass towers anywhere else, right? So
no, so you got to go what the fish are biting on.
yeah.
Right? And right now, super suites has kind of been the bread and butter. I'm also purging out older inventory
Mhm.
in town, moving the furniture to Mahogany.
Yeah.
And it makes sense for me to kind of consolidate things, efficiency of housekeeping. We have the director of care on site to help me out with move-ins and things.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
it's a nice upgrade. You always want to be purging to new and to the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's been a super interesting career path too. And again, like I kind of came into it when you were already rolling with it, but I've heard you speak so many times. I've heard the story and I'm excited now that we're sharing it with this audience as well. But you're actively always adding, different things. Because again, now you've got this active independent living, you've still got super suites. You're always adding more properties to the portfolio. So obviously you're still looking for more partners out there, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, if anyone is very interested, what's the best way someone can reach out to you if they want to get involved in this kind of models that you're creating and creating these systems of returns for people?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you keep inviting me back, and
Yeah.
I love doing it. I love seeing all my friends, and just giving back, giving a little idea, just like how I took it from Rain back in the day. Maybe somebody gets a spark here tonight and opens their own, little independent living or something. That'd be
Yep.
great. But basically, if somebody wants to invest, like I have evolved now from doing individual joint ventures into a limited partnership structure
Right.
for super suites. So Justin Smith at Hawkeye Wealth, who
Yep.
many of the listeners will know.
Yeah, we've actually had him out to our events as well speaking. So
Yeah, he's a beauty and just super integrity. Known him since back in the day, just like you, came up the ranks like us.
yeah.
And big Warren Buffett fan too.
Yeah, totally.
So basically, they contact his office. He makes sure that it's a suitable investment for them. They
Right.
acknowledge the risk, which I'm proud to say, still at this point, we've never lost an investor's money on any single deal.
It's amazing.
That's the number one rule: is don't lose money.
Absolutely.
Don't forget that rule.
Yep.
And I'm sure a day will come, but I think the track record speaks for itself with that many exited deals in
Yeah.
individual silos that we are pretty prudent managers and we'll bunker in for the long haul. But there are still some opportunities in active independent living and things like that, project by project
Yeah.
based. And then for super suites, the limited partnership is such a great opportunity. A lot of the people that have come in are original right from Agassiz.
Right. Right.
Rolling it in, my brother, Cons, everybody. It's great because they don't have to qualify for mortgages anymore, which is a big hassle these days.
Yeah.
And you can invest as little as $25,000, whereas recently, before we did this, you'd need probably $125,000
Right.
to
Right.
get into a deal. So it opens.
It makes it more accessible for the average person.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in the future, we'll accept RSPs and things.
Nice. That's amazing. So before we kind of wrap up, I want to kind of touch a little bit on a little bit of a personal thing then, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
But we talked a lot about the systems that you've done and the everything you've put together. But let's talk a little bit more about what that's done for you now, because I know you've just recently achieved some of your own goals and milestones. One of the big ones I've seen is obviously you've bought your own boat now, right? So let's talk about like what real estate's been able to do for you and some of these achievements that you've been able to reach. That at the day you were kind of talking early on that's what you wanted early, and if you worked hard you'd get it, but then you delayed your gratification, right? So we're going to kind of circle back to that. So talk about that delayed gratification and what you've been able to achieve through real estate now for yourself.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate that question, and it's really great. It's like it was felt like such a struggle for such a long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you see so many other people in Vancouver making these huge gains overnight, and here I am in the valley just slogging it out.
Yep.
Driving an Oldsmobile Aurora 8 years into being a mega successful real estate investor with
Mm-hmm.
80 plus properties.
Yeah.
And still just kind of bunkering down. And then the wave came, as you guys know. It came to Abbotsford, and I was sitting there waiting for the wave to wash over, and it finally came.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to wonder if it ever would, because there was a little mini boom in the valley that stopped at about 200th Street,
Right.
in 2014 or whatever.
Yeah.
But finally it came, and you can't respond to the wave when it's there. You're too late.
Mm-hmm.
So you build it.
You're just reacting.
Like we're building in Calgary right now. We're up
Yeah.
to 15, 20 units. We're building. It's a hard slog, and then the wave's going to come, and we're going to be positioned for it.
Yeah.
But my dad and I just last year bought a Nordic tug, and
Mm-hmm.
named it after my grandpa,
Right.
Roy Peever, who died before I was born.
Mm.
So it's kind of a little tribute to my grandpa.
Right.
And it's true to the rich dad philosophy too, because it's a charter boat.
Yep.
And we bought this boat strategically because they hold their value. I'm the third owner, 10 years old. It's depreciated about as much as they typically do,
Mm-hmm.
and it rents really well. It's a
Right.
42-foot Nordic tug, sleeps 7 people.
Right.
So
Right.
you can rent it to 2 couples, a good-sized group, and they can afford it. It's kind of like a trip of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
They go for a week. We typically bareboat charter it, where if somebody's got a lot of experience, they take it out on their own.
Yeah.
And it's done through Cooper's Boating, which is kind of like partnering with me in real estate. They're the operator, they're the expert.
Yeah.
I give them 40% of the revenue, and they run their systems
Right.
and operate it. So that's one big thing that's given me a lot of joy, is taking the boat out with my dad. Spending a lot of time with my dad, my
Mm-hmm.
brother.
Yeah.
We took every investor out over the summer. We're taking out all kinds of groups, really
Yeah.
working a lot on it.
That's awesome.
It's been a really good tool for that, and just a lot of fun instead of
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the coffee shop. Also, in general, real estate, what it's done for me is, I love working from home. Like
Yeah.
I've got it down now where I work 1 or 2 days in the office.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do calls all day Wednesday. Like I've got a nice little schedule where I can be in my nice headspace at the farm.
Yeah.
We just bought a farm in December.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
got a baby on the way.
It's awesome.
So lots of exciting stuff happening. And at the end of the day, like, it gives you freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what everybody's after, is the
Yeah.
ability to spend time with who you want, where you want, as much as you want. If someone gets sick, you can go to them, stay
Yeah.
there, without having to leave to go to work. And I like mentioning on the flip side of that, if you want to do this full time, you have to love it, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
love the doing.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
It's not. There's no such thing as passive investing, and in my opinion, and basically, if you want to go that route, then go that route. But if you're going to operate, like, you're on 24/7.
Yeah.
And that's what people get when they partner with me. Maybe they're passionate about soccer and art and traveling and stuff. Like, if I'm on the beach for 2-3 days, I'm ready to get back on the
Yeah.
grind. It's just
Yeah.
what I love.
Totally. And here's the thing about it too, as you mentioned very early on. A lot of people look at real estate and they look at the fast, successful people like you mentioned. But real estate's now afforded you to be able to do these things. Buy that boat with your dad. Buy the farm. And at the end of the day, though, it wasn't overnight. Like it took since 2005. You've only been starting to do this in the last year, so we're talking almost 15 years. Building that for yourself and your family, right? So it just goes to show that if you're persistent, you just delay that gratification is key. And then there's a quote out there that I've heard many times, but it's basically like, successful people will do what most people won't, so they can live a life like most people can't.
100%.
right? And so you slogged away, you've grinded, you've got it done, and now it's in a position where it's able to afford you those extra luxuries in your life that you want, right? So having that charter boat, having the ability to work from home when you need to and take time off when you want to. So that's amazing. And so to me, you're kind of the pinnacle of real estate success at the end of the day. You're the model that most people should be paying attention to, because everyone else is wanting to do the quick flip to make the $35,000 per deal in 6 months or whatever, and then they're getting burned in market slowdowns like this. Whereas you've just said, okay, our system is steady Eddie. We'll grind through the slow times because we know it's harvest time down the road. So it's farming. Yeah.
I always make posts like, oh, I'm just driving by, checking my crops, I'm watching them get framed up, I'm watching them dig the hole. It's just like farming.
I love it.
I love thinking about it that way, because Jim Rohn talks about the seasons of real estate, or the seasons of business.
Yes.
Seasons of life, seasons of anything.
Yeah.
And the ant philosophy. It's like all winter, you just think spring. Okay, we're going to get out of this. Let's pack it down, batten down the hatches. In spring, you're planting the seeds. If you don't plant the seeds, you're not going to reap the harvest come harvest time. Right? So you're busy planting seeds in the spring. Summer, you're keeping the stratas at bay and the tenant issues and the, collections and maintenance and keeping the bugs and the weeds away from your garden. And then in the harvest, you reap your reward without you deserve it at that point.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Derek, I really, really appreciate you. Like I said, we've kind of talked about getting you on this podcast for a while, and we made it happen today. This was an amazing interview today. One thing I like to do with my audience here is to get a book recommendation from whoever's speaking with me today, because at the end of the day, you've read a ton. I know that, and we've had some amazing book recommendations from some of our other speakers. But what's one book that if someone were to want to get diving into it right away, and I think I know what you're going to say, but maybe you'll change it on me. What would be your book recommendation for someone to get that book and start reading and getting into this business?
Well, I'll go for one of the greats, but not, I don't think one of the top, 3 or 4 that typically get mentioned.
Okay. So I knew you were going to throw it at me.
But the first one that came to my mind would be Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Good to Great.
And
okay.
It's Built to Last as well. Those are his 2 books, and he's got lots of good stuff on YouTube as well.
Excellent.
From like Peter Drucker and the classic management stuff. But it's really good stuff.
Good to Great. Okay, guys, so you heard that from Derek. Go and pick up a copy of that book. Start studying it. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I think, Derek, will really kind of like what he talked about the whole time was just go out there and take action, right? Figure it out, go take action, because you can learn all you want, but at the end of the day, you got to go buy that condo in Agassiz.
Well, that's an interesting kind of closing note, is that my friend that was sitting in the car with me that day never got the book.
Right.
Still struggling, still living paycheck to paycheck, regretting it, but you just got to go for it. Like I went to Chapters the next day. Yeah, that's awesome. Derek, thank you so much again for coming onto the podcast. Again, if you guys want to get in touch with Derek, it's easy enough. Google him, Peeverconn Group of Companies. You can check out supersuites.ca, I believe it is, right? Or you get in contact with Hawkeye Wealth if you want to start investing with Derek. I'll also throw some links below so you guys can, in the show notes, go take a look at it, get in connection with him. As well, if you want to connect more with this podcast, of course, you can go on either Instagram or Twitter, use the hashtag ManningUpRE, hashtag ManningUpRE. You can ask questions of me. We can maybe, if we get some good questions, we can interview and talk to some of our other future guests with those questions, answer them live on the show here. As well as if you want more content, you can also go head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cameron Manning, where we're following a vlog. Go ahead, Derek. I just want to say one last thing. So I believe I was your first speaker.
I believe you were.
And we had maybe one row
of
people, right?
Yeah.
That was what, a couple of years ago?
Probably about like 5 years ago now.
Was it 5 years ago?
Maybe, yeah. We've been doing this for 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I just want to say how impressed I am with everything you're doing, and growing this thing like it's bursting at the seams.
Thank you, Derek.
Following people like Russell Westcott, Dave Steele on stage is really humbling for me, and just really glad to be your friend.
I appreciate it, Derek. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's podcast. Go check out Derek's stuff. All of the links are in the show notes below. Thanks for tuning in again, and we'll bring you another awesome speaker again here soon. Derek, again, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
Hey now, 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 hey now. What you gonna do with your life?